the part of the current, part of the series, another topic that is quad. So what is meant by a quad, which is in news of late, right? So quad is, as the name says, it is a number. It represents four, right? So it's a grouping of four countries. So grouping of what are those four countries? India, USA, Australia, and Japan. If you see the the composition of this grouping, all of them are distributed in the different parts of the world, but all of them are bordered by the particular seas. So we'll see that. But if you see these three countries which are in this group, unlike India, all these three are developed, but India is a developing country. So why these developing developed countries partnered are made join India to be part with them, which is a developing country? That is the most important question. And what are their aims going further? We can see. So the board that we call it as, is it an official? Official means, is there an agreement that is signed by the member countries? No. So as part of it, there is no any formal agreement between these countries. It is only an informal group which has been agreed upon by these member countries. Okay. And to discuss which are issues which are common for all four countries. Okay. It is not a grouping that is created to discuss the world problems, but it is a group that is created to discuss the issues which are concerning all the four countries, which are concerning for all the four countries. Next, what it is aimed at? It is specifically aimed at broadly one specific thing, to bring it, cooperation, right? To find a cooperation. Cooperation is all about supplying with the efforts and capacities which can be done by the each member in their own capacity. Okay, different members have different capacities, and each of that capacities, if they supply with towards one particular common objective, then you can see that cooperation or cooperative. Okay, so the aimed at cooperation for what? A free and open Indo-Pacific region. So there are two words here: Indo-Pacific region. Another thing is free and open. Okay, so first and foremost is, what is Indo-Pacific? Indo-Pacific, as we know, that these are two oceans, two large oceans. What are they? That is, one is Indian Ocean, another one is Pacific Ocean. Pacific Ocean. So now the region means the countries are the even the oceans together. Countries and even the oceans, right? The ocean regions together. If you see all that region, okay, all that region, we call it as Indo-Pacific region. Indo-Pacific region. Okay, so you can see that in Indo-Pacific region there are multiple countries. The multiple countries is on the westernmost part of the Indian Ocean. You can see that African continent, and in the the northern part of the Indian Ocean is Asian continent, and the southern part of the Indian Ocean, you can see that Antarctica, and also the the Australia, and for the Pacific, you can see that North America and South America, right? So multiple countries are covered in this particular region called as Indo-Pacific region. And also you can see that most of the countries, right, except the European countries, all other countries have typically connected to either of these two oceans. And because of it, you can see any trade that is happening between these countries which are neighboring these two oceans, right? Most of the trade goes through these two oceans, and especially the Indian Ocean, Okay, so it is a region of lot of trade do happen, and to secure this trade. Securing trade means the ship that is traveling through the open sea from one country to another country, till the time it reaches to the another country, there are a lot of security issues from different corners, like piracy problem, right? Clear? So to secure these maritime trade lines, naval establishments also located. Naval establishment, all the countries which are having the border with these Indian, these two oceans, okay, these two oceans, they have their own naval, that means ports. Ports, ports are used for the commercial shipping purpose, and apart from that, there are security places also. The given, the navies, will have their own naval ports. Will have their own naval ports. So this is a region for two purposes. One is for the security, right, which is necessary, that every country is bothered about threat that is coming from the different corners of the world. Another thing is that to use it for the betterment, for the mutual benefit, that is for the maritime trade. That is the importance of any ocean, or specifically this region that is attached with. But what is the problem with the Indo-Pacific region? Why these countries are looking, talking about the cooperation, and they are saying that we want free and open. What does it mean by free and open here? So to understand the free and open, that you can see, if we, what is, why we are talking about free and open, right? So first we'll see that the China, as it started growing economically, they started asserting themselves that we are also want to be a powerful country. Okay, so post 2000s especially, China, started becoming more powerful economically. So any economic powerhouse, automatically it will become a powerhouse in the military power, military wise also. So from that nature, that the China is asserting that we also want to become a powerful country. So the from that point of view, what they're doing is they started showing its influence, military power, economic power, and also political influence in the countries which are located in this region. Countries which are located in this region, by using the economic power of the China, or maybe political power of the China, are possible by using a threat, okay, military threat, right? They are imposing their own rules. But if, when they are imposing their own rules, means we need to see the nature of China. The nature of China is not a democratic country. China is an autocratic country, a communist country, ruled by one single powerful person. Okay, so as it is not a democratic country, you do not see that democratic rights are not being enjoyed, not made them implemented inside the China. And the same type of, the Chinese rules will also made that they will be implementing in this region on the other countries. And because of it, you can see that the mutual, the benefit that should be received from the trade is not being received. And apart from that, China is creating a kind of imbalance or a threat to other countries, threat to other countries. So that is the bigger problem that we are facing, a problem that free and open means that free here is maritime trade should be open for everyone, and resources that are available in open source, in the open seas, should be available for the every countries. But rather than that, it is being muzzled by the China, that they, that particular water body belongs to only that country, and all the resources available in that water body belongs to us. And these are some things which goes against the rules which are created by the member countries in the world under United Nations. Okay, so there is something called as like a rule of law in a domestic country. There is something called as international law. International law that is agreed upon by the member, all the world countries under the guidance of United Nations. So that law should be, accepted and implemented and followed by all the member countries. But to make it happen, the rule of law or maybe international law, a country obviously should have to be a democratic country. If it is not democratic, what they do is to, the given leader to show themselves as a powerful person, they do go by the ruling of whims and fancies. So they don't go by the law. They don't go by the letters. They don't give respect to any law. Whatever they say, that itself is a law. So that is the problem with China. So China becoming a powerful country, nobody objecting it. But an undemocratic country becoming a powerful country, with a powerful economy in the world, it is creating a problem of this kind of, the distorting international law and using military power, excessive military power, right? And economic theft and political influence to change the present status quo. Okay, which is not being liked by the some of the countries, which is not being liked by the some of the countries. And because of the actions of China, they are creating problems wherein, which are almost akin to the same thing as like, the Cold War between the US camp and the USSR camp. Now it has turned to Western countries, one group, and the China and Russia on this side is another group. Okay, so this is what is leading to a security problem or security military problem in the Indo-Pacific region. So towards, as this problem is created, and there are other problems also, we'll see that going ahead, but major problem is this one in the Indo-Pacific. Okay, next, what is the origin to this particular group called as a Quad? So first we need to see here that the Quad as an origin, first time it had, it is occurred in news in 2007. Who, the coined it? The then Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan. Okay, the Prime Minister of Japan at that point of time, Shinzo Abe, he coined this term, wherein that a particular country which have a direct, confrontation with China with respect to one of the specific islands located in the East China, which is located between China and Japanese islands. So both the, that both the countries are claiming the ownership of that particular islands. So there is one particular problem between those two countries. Another thing is, as such, Japan is already a developed country, but a new rising country like Japan, China is creating, the different kinds of security problems in the given region. So this accelerating rise of China has actually, the demanded the Japanese Prime Minister at that point of time to talk about something called as creating a club of major democratic powers, a club of major democratic powers in the Indo-Pacific region. As part of it, he wrote an article to show, what does it meant by this one, right? Whatever he mentioned in one of the speech, what is the meaning of this one? He wrote an article in the Japanese Institute of International Affairs, where he observed that in this club of major democratic powers, he specifically relied upon the specific relation between Japan and India. And that Japan and India also, he was talking about that we need to get benefit of trade, that one developed country with the another developing country. Another thing is Japan, which is a developed economy, it does not have any space to accommodate any new manufacturing plants. So the Japanese people is looking for the countries which can provide the value, the viable policies which will help the Japanese people to come and invest and manufacture in other countries. So this is where, from that point of view, you can see China became a powerful country or economic powerhouse it is because majorly most of the investment that are come, that had come from the Japan. Even now also most of the Japanese, investment has went to the China. So that is what here, that we need to find another country which is democratic. Democratic means they do always follow a law, right? Unlike the Chinese countries, which is autocratic. So that Japanese investment can be routed to India, and from India to Japan, you can see that there is trade can be exceeded. Trade can happen more between these two countries in comparison to Japan, US, or Japan, China. And that too, he expected that within a decade, we should make it happen. We should make it happen. So going by that conviction, what he did is dramatically what did is the Japanese government and with the relation with India till that point it was going in a sublime manner. It was going in a very low phase. But after this, the particular declaration or maybe the article written by the Japanese Prime Minister, the Japanese government took considerable steps to increase the trade with India, and also they also made a pact with a security partnership with India. And going by this in 2000 level, India signed a free trade agreement with Tokyo, the Japan. Okay, a comprehensive economic partnership. So they had shown their commitment and they had moved in the direction what they had aimed. Our Prime Minister has mentioned in the Japanese Prime Minister mentioned in 2007. Okay, so taking this, the opportunity, what he used is he has used multiple catchy phrases. That is called confluence of seas. Confluence of seas means multiple seas are there. So we are talking about Indian Ocean, but since in the Indian Ocean there are multiple seas, right? Like we have Bay of Bengal, Arabian Sea. So they are also having the East China Sea, South China Sea. So the confluence of seas, he was using one of the word, right, to describe the Indo-Pacific. Asia's democratic security diamond. Asia's democratic security diamond. They want to create a security alliance between the military alliance between the countries which are located in Asia, and an arc of freedom and prosperity. An arc of freedom and prosperity. Freedom is the word that is associated with the the democratic countries. In a democratic countries, freedom is one of the vital fundamental right that is made available to the country's citizens. And any country which is respect the freedom inside the country, they do also respect this word with respect to other countries. That is the freedom choice, right? Freedom of speech, expression. This is vital for the human growth. Another thing is the prosperity. So when you have freedom to the individuals, you can see that the country is prospering because you are the unleashing the innovative capacities of the given country's people, then automatically it will lead to the bringing the prosperity to the country's people. Okay, so this is what you're talking about. The democratic in the country's partnership means democratic countries will give respect to the freedom. Freedom will automatically bring in the prosperity. That is what he's saying. So what he talked about is even though he had given much emphasis to the India-Japan relations, but he emphasis more, he had talked about there should be a four countries grouping, and we need to create a diamond, okay, shaped relation. That is wherein he brought in the through negotiations, he brought in this group US and Australia also, which are having, somehow connected to this particular region. Okay, US anyway the most powerful country. So US is be part of any grouping means obviously it carries a lot of weight to that particular group. And another, the country which is located in the given region, democratic and developed country, is Australia. So through Japan negotiation, they have brought in those two. So that is how we can see that in 2007, a four-country quad grouping has formed. That is completely informal. But what happened is at that point of time, this particular grouping that has formed, many countries and China is also, started treating it like it is a group that has formed to create enmity or to oppose the China's rise. So opposing China is at that point of time was not warranted for many of the countries. For example, for the US. US is if we try to, increase activities under quad, grouping, if that means negotiations or discussions, if we try to increase, then it will directly create an atmosphere that we are directly opposing China. Directly opposing China will lead to confrontation between the countries like US and the China. So that is not warranted by the uh, that is what not demanded by the world, the US at that point of time. The second thing is the the Australia. Australia have a lot of trade, import and export trade with China. So what Australia thought at that point of time is it might anger the Chinese people if we are part of this particular grouping, which is giving an impression that it is created in against to the Chinese, China's rise. So that is why to not to attract any kind of the negative reaction from China in against to Australia. So this group has become dissolved. It did not function properly. So it did not went ahead. So what they did, the group is dissolved at that point of time. Okay. Then if at that point of time, different countries for different reasons they had did not take this idea forward. Okay. Only thing is initially they had participated in the discussion, but later on the group itself has dissolved. And later on, again, it was revived. When you can see that with the arrival of Xi Jinping, right? As soon as he came to the present premier of Chinese government, okay, as soon as he came to power, you can see that China's assertiveness in the world politics and the region is increased enormously. Okay, showing that they are most powerful. They are most powerful, and because of the assertiveness, Japan problem, which is Harry, which is having problem with China after since World War II, that is on the ownership of this island called as Senkaku Island, which is almost located in the middle of this Japan and China, which is located in the East China Sea. Okay. And another thing is China is continuously expanding. China's continuously expanding its sphere of influence on the other countries located in the South China Sea or maybe in the East Asia. East Asia like Philippines or maybe all the ASEAN countries or even the Myanmar, right? And this is another thing is the Xi Jinping has come up with a policy called as a Belt and Road Initiative. So Belt and Road Initiative is in the old days there used to be something called as the Silk Road. Okay, so the Silk trade route, which is from that is China was doing trade with a lot of countries in the the Asia and also all the way to the the Africa and also all the way to the Europe. Okay, so that is that is want to be he wanted to revive with the the particular initiative that is called the Belt and Road Initiative. Okay, Belt and Road Initiative through on on by road he wanted to connect the cities, and another thing is by open seas connecting from the China to other countries so that to increase the trade. So in that process, they are also Chinese people are also is investing a lot of money in the form of creating different infrastructure in all the countries which are connected through the Belt and Road Initiative. This initiative is majorly to increase the trade. But to increase the trade, what they are doing is the Chinese people, they are also investing a lot of money in the infrastructure in those countries, and majority of those countries are developing or poor countries. So they obviously they are in the critical need of the foreign capital. So this is where what China is doing is China is investing and giving loans to create that infrastructure at a very high interest rate. And these countries do not have the capacity to repay it back. What China is doing is, okay, then that infrastructure project, give it to us. Okay, we will be continuously operating in your country. Project will be owned by us, and we will be operating it. So because of through this, you can see that China is continuously making its presence available in other countries, and because of its economic, the problems, or maybe this is also called as a debt trap, right? By forcing these countries into debt, they are leveraging upon those countries to derive the concessions which are conducive for the for the China. Okay, so these are the problems for the because of these things. In 2017, again the Quad nation has agreed to reconvene, and by then you can see that recently India had a problem with China, especially in 2020 during COVID time, the Doklam standoff. The 2018, the Doklam standoff. The Doklam is a place located in the tri-junction of India, Bhutan, and China. So the Tibet place. Okay. So there was a standoff. After 72 days, the standoff, what happened is the Chinese and Indian forces were retreated. But otherwise, they were almost eye to eye during that time. So these are happening. It shows that China's assertiveness is increasing, showing that we are a powerful country. We can attack India, right? So even to 2017, even 2020, there was no set of objectives. What this group is for, and what are the areas of cooperation, right? And what is the definition of Indo-Pacific? Nothing is fixed between the Quad members. Okay, but they were officially saying that yes, we want to be part of the one grouping. We want to discuss and we want to cooperate with each other with the each country's the capacities, so that to create a collective the capacities or collective energies. Okay, clear. So this is where you can see that what happened is recently they had created specifically decided what are the objectives of Quad grouping. What are the objectives of Quad grouping? In March 2021, last year, the US president has called in suddenly for a virtual meet. So virtual in online. Okay. So there they had decided what are the objectives of the Quad grouping, right? What they want to achieve. Okay. And what are the actionable, actionable goals they want to achieve. Okay. And also that they had formed different expert groups in multiple areas wherein they want to find out the specific modalities of cooperation in multiple areas. So that's why they had formed in a grouping of expert groupings. Okay, experts. So this is where you can see what is the specific joint statement that is talked about. The mention about the joint statement means all the 4 countries will sign that statement, and that is issued after this virtual summit. Free, open, rule-based order, rooted in international law, inundated by coercion. Coercion means by using power rather than the convincing the other person, by using threat and power. If you are making other person to comply with the policy, that is called coercion. And then to bolster security and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific region and beyond. So this is what we discussed, the summary we have been discussing till now. Free, open, rule-based order, international law, giving respect to the international law, do not use any coercion. Using coercion is against to the law, right? And increasing the security, and also by increasing security, bring in the prosperity for all the countries collectively in the region. Okay, so that is what is the joint statement. And you can see that the emphasis was clearly laid out. Rule of law. What is rule of law? One is domestic law, another one is international law. They follow always what law says, not what one country is saying. Every country has to accept this international law. Territorial integrity. Other countries should accept the boundaries which are recognized by the other countries. Okay. No country can distort the territorial, the geographical boundaries of another country, as like China is doing that by ingressing into the India's land. Okay. So they are doing with multiple countries. The Chinese people are not giving respect to the territorial, the boundaries, geographical boundaries. Next thing is freedom of navigation in open seas for peaceful trade. Every country have a right to have the navigation rights. That is called a freedom of rights. Open seas we are talking about. Overflight in that region, every country's flights can fly. Okay, and if there is any dispute arises, there should be peaceful method. Peaceful method should be used to resolve those disputes and give always value to the democratic values. Okay, the values which are espoused by the democratic countries, those are like freedom. I told you, right? The freedom, human rights, all these, the fundamental rights needs to be respected. Okay, and if that respected, then only the each country will grow. Each country growing in a region will become a collective growth, and that will bring in the collective benefits. Okay, so for all the democracy and democratic values should be exposed. Okay, what are the specific areas of cooperation they have decided to cooperate, are cooperating, or we want to cooperate going ahead? The first and foremost, under the Quad Leaders Summit, they had formed a grouping, an alliance, the vaccine, the Quad Vaccine Initiative. Quad Vaccine Initiative. What is the aim of this initiative? They want to manufacture and distribute at least 1 billion COVID vaccines to the countries located in the Asian region. Okay, all the countries in the Asian region could not have their own vaccines and they do not have manufacturing facilities. So that is why that these countries decided that first we should cooperate in helping the other countries with the one specific common problem every country is facing, COVID-19. So all the countries, so by the end of, so this is something that they want to do it by end of 2022. So what is the specific plan? If you see, this is something wherein US want to manufacture the vaccines in India. US want to manufacture vaccines in India because India is the the pharmaceutical hub of the world. We have a lot of the biggest manufacturing plants in India to produce to develop the vaccines or to manufacture the vaccines. Okay, so US want to utilize India's capacity. Finance, the money support will be done by US and Japan. The technology will be from the US companies. Money is from US government and Japanese government. Delivery will be taken care by the Australia and Japan. This is the specific first area of cooperation. They already, they wanted to cooperate and they are almost discussing about it. Okay. And next thing is the another common, the requirement for the world countries is the emerging technologies. Most important emerging technology is the 5G telecommunication. For the rolling out of 5G telecommunications and for commercializing of 5G telecommunications, which will bring in the high-speed internet, right? So you need new infrastructure. So who will supply this new infrastructure to the world countries? So this is where the Chinese countries, the Chinese companies wanted to take advantage of this, the demand for this 5G infrastructure. So that is why, but if the China increases the supplies, then what happens is obviously the Chinese influence on those countries increases. And in against to this Chinese supply, suppose all these Quad members, if they themselves collectively develop this 5G infrastructure, and that too at a cheaper cost compared to the China, right? And now, if you see, the world countries will definitely subscribe to the infrastructure supplied by the Quad countries. It is because Quad countries are democratic countries, and you can negotiate with them. They will have a policy certainty. They will always follow a law. They will always give respect to other countries' governments and their countries' people's wishes. Okay, so this is another thing which they wanted to bring in their collective efforts in developing the 5G telecommunications, so that you can directly beat the Chinese supply with. Okay, so that you can contain that power. And next thing is another thing. There are emerging military technologies. Like UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, and autonomous, the weapons, automation, right? So in weapons, rather than humans are being used to fire or guard the given place, now the autonomous weapons are also being used, right? Clear. And robotic systems and hypersonic weapons, the flights which can move with the as like with the speed of sound, the hypersonic weapons, those are in the critical development stage by the world countries at present. And quantum technology, which is also being used for the military, which is also have the military applications, right? So this is where again these four countries wanted to cooperate with to develop collectively, right? And another thing is they wanted to collectively sponsor and build different infrastructure projects, in the Asia Indo-Pacific region. This is wherein the creation of infrastructure, Chinese people are leveraging their influence, are forcing the countries into a debt trap to find, to get, to coerce those countries. Okay, so this is wherein these countries, the world, these four countries have decided that they should collectively, the build infrastructure projects in a transparent manner. That means pricing is decided in a transparent manner, unlike the, clouded manner by the Chinese people. Okay, in a transparent manner, by creating this, building this infrastructure in the given region. This is one method you can typically contain the Chinese influence in the given region. Contain the, the Chinese influence in the given region. So infrastructure creation is, or as I told you already mentioned, it is also one of the initiative as part of the Belt and Road Initiative. Belt and Road Initiative. Clear? This is what I mentioned here. Loans, acceptance, they could not able to repay it back, debt trap, Chinese people forcing that countries to give that particular infrastructure project for the maintenance and ownership to the Chinese people. Okay, and this is where they want to, the Quad countries want to come in. Okay, next, the Quad countries also created a working group. As I told you, the working groups also created for some specific sectors for the combating of climate change. Combating of climate change, collectively all these four countries to combat the climate change, right? You need obviously new infrastructure, right? New machines, or maybe the new technologies that is needed to combat the climate change, or to move away from the present conventional energy sources, or present, the energy sources, to the new energy sources. You need the critical infrastructure, or maybe the critical new machines, or anything. So this is wherein what they're doing is, this Quad countries has created a working group to oversee the efforts to foster green shipping. Green shipping, that means the open line, the shipping lines. How can we move it to, to make it the green shipping? Green shipping means the energy that is used is not, should not be fossil fuel, but other energy sources. Other energy sources. Next thing is, this is where you can see they're promoting the use of clean hydrogen, that is green hydrogen based maritime shipping. They wanted to encourage, so that you can see that they are combating something called against to climate change. Climate change. Okay, and another thing is, recently all these four countries also discussed, all these four countries recently, again the US president hosted another virtual summit. In that virtual summit for this Quad grouping, they have decided to set up a humanitarian assistance and disaster relief mechanism. Humanitarian assistance, that means if any conflict occurred, the most suffering is will be done by innocent people. The most suffering will be by the innocent people. To those innocent people, what is assistance that can be provided with the basic necessary elements like food, right? The drinking water, and the the proper sleeping facilities. That is the humanitarian assistance. Next thing is disaster relief mechanism. If any disaster occur in the any given country, not only in the Quad grouping, in any of the Southeast Asian region. So in the, during the disaster time, what are the relief measures that can be supplied, support can be provided to that country? So they wanted to build these mechanisms, and by building these mechanisms continuously, they can meet future humanitarian challenges in the Indo-Pacific region. So the original Quad grouping idea also come out of this humanitarian assistance and one of the disaster relief mechanism. So what happened is, there was a, the tsunami in the Indonesia in 2004. So in the tsunami relief measures, India participated immediately without, being invited. And later on, China, Japan also added. Japan also participated in that relief measure. So that is how later on slowly the Australia and the US also was added. That is the original, the first time the Quad idea has, the idea was originally originated, and which was actually exposed by the later on by the Japanese Prime Minister. But later on, that humanitarian assistance was dissolved. Okay, but this is what again recently they have decided, they wanted to create this permanent mechanism of human assistance disaster relief mechanism under the US, under this Quad grouping. Okay, And another thing is now at present, they wanted to provide a channel for communication, right? They wanted to provide a channel of communication among these four countries to address the issues that are coming out of the present Russia-Ukraine crisis. Present Russia-Ukraine crisis. So this is another area of cooperation. Next thing is there are some metals that are used that is called, the critical sources that is called lanthanide series of elements in the periodic table. These are generally, we don't know the names of these, the elements. Okay. But these are having the commercial usages in the military applications and also in the manufacturing of semiconductors. Okay. So these are the critical inputs that are used in the manufacturing of all these, the semiconductors, which are vital for the car manufacturing and all these things, right? The chip manufacturing. So, but for all these things, these countries, the majority of the world countries are depends upon the China's supplies. Chinese supplies. So to have less reliance on the Chinese supplies, obviously these countries have decided that we want to create our own supply line, or we have to develop our own the supply of these critical elements. Okay, clear. Next, why the specifically here, the specific another area of cooperation recently what US launched is couple of days back on May 23rd, there was officially quad meeting happened in the Japan, right? So there the US president has launched something called as Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. The first and foremost, why US launched it? Why US launched? It is not launched by the quad grouping, but it is launched by one country called as US. But it is launched as part of the quad grouping meeting. Okay. So why it was launched? See, there are, the true, the trade blocks. The trade blocks mean these are agreement. Those are called as a free trade agreements. Free trade agreement between member countries. What is a free trade agreement? Free trade agreement, it talks about what is the import duty. On exports, no country will levy any export duty. Okay, exports are always zero rated, but every country do levy something called as import duty. In our country, we call it as basic customs duty. Basic customs duty. If this duty is higher, then it means that we are discouraging that imports. We are just discouraging that imports. That is an impression, right? Suppose if there is no import duty, then what happens? The imports will increase. Imports will increase. So if in this manner, suppose two countries negotiated something called as a free trade agreement. That means what one country is exporting to other country, there will not be any import duty. What this country is exporting to this country, there will not be any import duty. And because of it, you can see that this country is benefited, this country is benefited. This country is both the countries are benefited. This is called a free trade agreement. This is bilateral free trade agreement. But if the same type of free trade agreement can be signed among many countries, that is called as free trade group. Okay, so our trade block. This is called a trade block. So likewise, you can see that in East, the Indian Ocean and North Pacific Oceans, the countries which are located in these two regions, there are two different trade blocks. One trade block is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The Trans-Pacific Partnership, the idea was originally originated by the come into existence because of the idea that is proposed by the then US, the President, Mr. Barack Obama, specifically to curb the Chinese influence in the given region. To curb the Chinese influence, economic influence, okay, influence in the region. He wanted to create another one big economic group among the member countries which are bordering the Pacific Ocean, the western side and eastern side. Western side and eastern side. But what happened is, as it is a free trade agreement, China, every country here is forced to decrease or cut down the import duties on many products. But when you're cutting down import duties on many products, what happens is when you're importing those products and you're not levying any import duty, it will discourage the domestic production. It will discourage the domestic production. And this is what happened here. Under this agreement, US government has forced to concede so many goods. They have to concede the cutting down of import duties. That is not liked by many of the domestic manufacturers in US. And then because of it, what happened is the next US governor, Mr. Donald Trump, as soon as he came to power in 2017, what he did is he withdrew US participation from the Trans-Pacific Partnership. But In this group, you can see that all other Pacific countries is made, they went ahead. Finally, in 2018, they had signed a free trade agreement. Okay, in 2007, in 2007, in 2000, the seven, it was proposed by the US governor at that point of time. But later on, what happened in 2017, it was, the US government was withdrawn. But by 2017 also, agreement was not signed. Negotiations were happening between the countries. But during the negotiation stage, there was a backlash against the US government from the US manufacturers. And because of finally in 2017, US withdrew. And after the US withdrawal, the name was changed from Trans-Pacific Partnership to Comprehensive Progressive Agreement on the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership. Only name change. But another thing is, as like originally, US is not part of this agreement. And finally, this agreement came into implementation because of the Japan. Japan has taken the lead in this group, and they had signed an agreement in 2018. Okay. And what happened is last year in 2021, now officially, what has been created by the announced by the Chinese, Japan, the US, by the Barack Obama, is that to contain the Chinese influence. Now China is going to be part of this one because they had formally applied to this grouping that we want to be part of this grouping. And in this grouping, what has been the idea coined by the US. Now US is not part of it, and it is created for the specific purpose in against China, but China is going to be a member of this. So you can see that Chinese influence is even more increasing. But US is not part. Another thing, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. This is also another free trade agreement, and which is signed among ASEAN countries, right? ASEAN countries and all other countries located in the Eastern India, eastern part of the Eastern Indian Ocean, all the way from Japan, South Korea, and all the way down to New Zealand, even Australia is part of this Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, RCEP, 40 member countries, in which this agreement, this particular partnership was actually discussions were led by China. This is the China's idea. And India was participating throughout the discussions. By the time this agreement was signed, India has withdrew because by signing this one, Indian farmers has opposed that from these countries there will be cheap import of agriculture products, which will hurt the domestic agriculture sector. And because of it, India has withdrew from the RCEP. So India is not a member in it, neither US is member in it. So you can see that almost all the countries in the ocean located in the eastern part of the Indian Ocean and also to the west part of the eastern part of the Pacific Ocean, they are part of the one grouping or the another free trade agreement in which US is not part of. And because of it, and in both these things, the China is going to be are part of these agreements. So what it looks like is the US do not have any power or leverage in this given region, but China is continuously increasing its power in the given region. You can see that there is imbalance in the power, and Chinese influence is increasing. So that is why here that an alternate to these two mechanisms, the US has come up with another mechanism that is called as the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework Agreement. Because you can see this is what we mentioned here, right? Fine. So this Indo-Pacific Agreement, rather than unlike other free trade agreements, which they give heavy concessions of decreasing or cutting down the import duties, which is actually creating or would be angering the domestic manufacturing companies. So this framework is little more flexible. So how it is? So before we see that, as soon as it is launched, what are the companies has shown interest to join it? Okay, so there are almost 11 countries has shown interest to join it, and India also joined it. Okay, other countries that you can see that all are East Indian Ocean country, located countries. Okay, and which together you can see that all these countries have having almost 40% of the world's GDP. 40% of the world's GDP member countries have shown interest to join this framework. Okay, and one country which is an ally of US, that is Taiwan, is not part of it. Okay, and if you see by the map wise, the 13 economies, and leaving this China, which is a red color, okay, leaving this, all the countries which are applied for You can see that their GDP values, and they trade with China. This red number represents the trade with China. So almost all the countries in this region which have applied to be the members of this framework, they have the heavy trade or depends upon the Chinese exports. Chinese exports. So this depends upon Chinese exports is something called as, the supply chains. Supply chains. For a lot of critical inputs or raw materials, all these countries depends upon the China's exports. China's exports. So the supply chains in these countries, supply chains for the manufacturing or the production of any end product, lot of all the countries are depends upon the critical supplies that are coming, that has to be come from the China, and this is called as the supply chains. This is called as the global supply chains linked to one particular country called as China. Okay, this is why under areas of cooperation, what we have seen multiple things wherein Quad countries wanted to develop collectively among themselves, right? It is because they wanted to create another supply chain, another supply chain for the so many critical infrastructures or critical inputs or raw materials. How different is this framework? This different, as I told you, it is not a free trade agreement. It is not a free trade agreement, and which will offer flexibility. Then what it is? Then what it is? So at present, we don't know what exactly the final framework of this. This is something, an initial framework released by the US government. Now the negotiations will start. Whoever want to be members of this framework, negotiations will start to decide finally what is the framework will be containing. Okay, so to have negotiations, that means discussions, there should be some standard, the some base should be created. So that base, what they have did is they had created a base in the name of 4 pillars. Okay, so each pillar talking about different things. So the pillar 1, it talks about trade. It talks about trade. So the trade is all about, as we know, the export and import of goods and services. Export and import of goods and services. So that is what you can see, that the trade happens not only export and imports of the goods and services, even the investment capital coming from one country to another country, people moving from one country to another country in search for a job, people to people movements, right? So this is all this pillar covers the high standard, inclusive, free and fair trade commitments, right, to fuel the economic activity and even the investments benefiting both workers and consumers, right? And another thing is, as part of this trade, which is traditionally linked to the export and import of goods and investment and movement of people, it is also willing to extend cooperation in enhancing the digital economy and their digital trade. Okay, now there is no sector that is not get influenced by the word called as digital, and nowadays most of the economy is powered with the digital source, right? And the trade is also many of the trade we can call it as there is a digital trade. Okay, so as part of it, you can see the digital trade. What does it mean by digital trade? Digital trade is something where the purchase and sale of something using a digital product, using a digital medium, selling and purchasing of products in online, selling and purchasing of online, and that too, that selling and purchase is happening across 2 countries. That means by using an Amazon platform, Indian person buying a good from American market. This is happened because of an individual directly can import goods from US to India. It is because of that is called a digital trade, and that is happened because of the online website. Okay, so likewise, there are something called a global value chain, supply chains like smart manufacturing platforms. These are all things. Okay, and another thing is, you can see that the digital trade, it does also the digital trade does also mean that when as part of the digital trade, the lot of digital services is being provided by other countries, other countries companies. Suppose Amazon is not an Indian company, it is an Amazon, the Western company, but we gave permission, right? So when the American company is operating in India, when Indian people are logging onto and they are signing up that particular website, we do give our data, so the data is being taken by that that country's company, that country's company. So how the data will be used? Will that be data be always kept confidential, or that will be data will be supplied to any other company to commercialize it? Right. So this is what digital trade do talks about, even the data sharing also. The data sharing about means the data about the people of that another country. So by using the digital technologies, you can create so many new manufacturing or so many economic activities. And by creating these new economic activities, what it does is it will create the less cost for the businesses, which are many of the companies now, they are completely digital companies. And for those digital companies, if there is a cooperation with respect to digital trade, or in this space, the cost of business will be coming down for those new companies. Okay. And automatic, and another thing is, we have to increase the cyber security that may be attacking the one country, that security threat may be coming from some third country. So how to protect in against to those cyber threats, that also needs to be will be negotiated under this pillar. Okay, pillar one. The pillar two is supply chain resilience. Supply chain, as I told you, many of the raw materials are the intermediate goods. World countries manufacturing facilities, India or even other countries in Asia, many of the countries are depend upon the supply or export that are coming from China. Okay. But during pandemic, we had seen the problem of relying on only one country for the critical inputs. So because of the pandemic in China, even before world went into lockdown, Chinese people locked down their economy. And as the production stopped there, almost all the world countries, they had to stop manufacturing of so many instruments, so many products. It is because lack of critical, the necessary raw materials, or maybe supply of intermediate goods, which all the world countries are depends upon China. But to get export from China, no activities happening inside China. Then world countries realized that we have to create alternate supply chains. So creating alternate supply chains is called as supply chain resilience. Resilience is in English. Okay. So that supply chain is for the different processed materials, raw materials, semiconductors, critical raw materials. Okay. Energy tech, anything, for whatever thing we are dependent upon one single country, not only in China. No country should depends upon only one country, right? No country should depends upon any other one country for the supply, critical supply of one specific raw material, any of these things. Take an example here, what is mentioned by as an example, okay, by the US Commerce Secretary recently in a press briefing. So there are manufacturing facilities which are located in the city called Michigan. So in that Michigan, the city, that recently, because of lack of availability of semiconductors, okay, lack of semiconductor packaging, the operations here, the what happened is, there were so many plant shutdowns in the Michigan. It is because the semiconductor supply in this facility, they were dependent upon the manufacturing that is happening in the Malaysia. The semiconductors manufactured in Malaysia. But because of the COVID, what happened is, the manufacturing in Malaysia has been came to standstill. And because of it, there was no semiconductor supply. And lack of semiconductor supply, total auto manufacturing plants had to shut down. And this is happened because of there was no early warnings, there was no open communication, that in Malaysia we are going to impose the lockdown. And it is because there was no transparency in reporting the COVID numbers, and they did not reveal the original numbers. And there was no communication officially from the Malaysian people to the Michigan manufacturing plants, right? So because of it, what happened is, lack of early warning and lack of transparency, lack of no communication, is forced the other countries manufacturing plants to shut down. And in against to this particular problem, they wanted to create new supply chain, which is resilient supply chain. So that for one specific product, multiple countries are manufacturing it, and multiple countries, those who want it, they can source from any of the countries. If not from one country, they can source from another country immediately. It will not have any of these things like plant shutdowns. Okay. The third initiative pillar is the clean energy and decarbonization. As I told you, all the world countries, they are one specific thing which is burning. and under negotiation between the world countries at the bilateral level or at the multinational grouping level is climate change, decarbonization of the economy. So this is wherein you can see, if you are asking the countries, okay, developing countries, to move to the clean energy sources or to decarbonize their economy, you need to supply with them the new technology. For example, green, the green hydrogen. To use green hydrogen, you need the fuel cell and you need cryogenic tank. So this is where, to develop these things, you need new technology. But developing this new technology, every country cannot develop it. But any country develops it, then the technology should be transferred to the other countries. That is one thing. Second thing is to invest on the research and development for the invention of any new technology. You need finance. So mobilizing finance is another important aspect. Okay. And another thing is, mobilizing finance means not only free money, it is also about loans, but at a concessional rate. At a concessional rate, so that you can increase the competitiveness in manufacturing the clean energy infrastructure, or to make the economy decarbonized, enhancing the connectivity, between the countries. Okay. And developing finally a sustainable and durable infrastructure. Sustainable means it will long last for, sustainable means for longer time. Durable means it can withstand for longer duration, right? For adopting the renewable energy sources. And another thing is, renewable energy sources are cheaper than the fossil fuels. Renewable energy sources, sun radiation available for free of cost, but petrol and diesel you have to get them by investing, by mining it. It costs. But the problem is, to convert the, to derive the energy by using renewable sources, at present it is costly compared to the energy to derive from the fossil fuels. And this is where the new research, the continuous research innovations needs to happen. How efficiently at a lesser cost we can produce energy by using renewable sources. That is where we need infrastructure. That is where we need new infrastructure. To develop this cost efficient renewable energy solutions, we need a lot of investment, lot of R&D. One country's scientist, one country's knowledge may not be sufficient. So this is where collectively all the countries together, they have to collectively work on the R&D part, financing part, right? If any new technology has found out, but giving away the technology at a lesser cost to all the countries, so that they can adopt their, their economies to the green alternates. This is what pillar 3. Pillar 4 is about the taxation system that will be followed in the respective countries. Okay. So the taxation system is, nowadays investment is coming from one country to another country. So when investment is coming from other country, how the tax treatment, how you are treating that investment, treating that investment means what kind of tax you are levying. So it also depends upon the taxation system that will be followed by that particular country. So the taxation system, the taxation law should be highly robust, internationally accepted rules, right? Clear. So, and the taxation system should be fair. That means you should not treat the foreign investment and domestic investment differentially. You have to treat them on par basis, right? Another thing is, that is with respect to taxation. Anti-corruption. Government should not be corrupted. If they are corrupt, then you cannot see that a policy implemented by those government cannot be having any law withstanding it, any law backing it. Okay, there will not be any trust. And law passed by any corrupt government will be bound to change anytime in the future. Okay. Another thing, measures importantly against the money laundering. Money laundering means earning the money through illegal means. Earning the money through illegal means. Like by selling the drugs, whatever money that is earned, that is called as money laundering. So what are the measures, or maybe the laws each country, or maybe measures they are taking in stopping this money laundering? Anti-bribery. To get anything from the government or maybe government officials, is bribery a necessary element, right? So we need to create these countries, those who are aiming, they want to be part of this particular framework, In those countries, what kind of taxation laws they should maintain, what are the anti-corruption measures they do take. So this is where they wanted to discuss along with the existing multilateral obligations and standards in the agreements. There are so many multilateral level agreements that are signed by the member countries with respect to the tax evasion, corruption in the the given country. In against to all these things, what are the measures and standards should be followed by the member countries, right? So like World Bank or IMF or maybe United Nations or OECD, all these groupings are taking multiple efforts to resolve different kinds of these taxation problems or corruption related problems. Okay. Next, how member countries can participate. Here, as part of negotiations that are going on, the member countries can participate only in the stipulated pillar. So here the flexibility is there is no condition that the members has to accept all the four pillars or the four pillar. They can say that suppose India can say that we do not like pillar one, we do want to participate only pillar two, pillar three, pillar four participation. The discussions, and inside the pillars also there are so many provisions. There are so many provisions. Take an example here. It is talking about one is about taxation system, money laundering, anti-bribery, right? Tax evasion, corruption. So there are multiple issues, commitments under each of the pillar, right? So even the country that is participating in the, even if they want to participate in one pillar, does not mean that they have to accept every commitment under that pillar. They can choose what are the commitment they want to, follow. Okay. So this is the great flexibility available under this framework. This is one of its first of its kind in the international, the country to country relations. Okay. So one of its first kind. Within the free trade agreement, any country that is participating in any group, every country has to follow everything that is agreed upon. No flexibility. But here there is a flexibility to choose the pillar. Inside the pillar also, you have the flexibility to choose the commitment also. To choose the commitments also. Which commitment they want to follow, which commitment they do not want to follow. Okay. That is the the advantage that is available with the member countries, those who are participating in the negotiation. And another thing is, once suppose later on this framework has been signed by the member countries, at present 11 members applied for the membership. For all these member countries participated in the negotiation, finally they have prepared the end document, then it will come into implementation. Once it come into implementation, then if any new country want to participate or want to join that framework, then a new country can choose which pillar they want to follow. Inside the pillar also, they can choose which commitment they want to follow. But only thing is, they have to specifically adhere to the stipulated goals and necessary obligations that will be kept as a responsibility on the member countries. Okay. So by the end of this framework, negotiations is over, this particular framework member countries will stipulate what are the goals they want to achieve, what are the obligations which are there on the member countries for the smooth rollout or implementation of this given the agreed upon framework. So these goals and obligation, any new country that will join after this framework is ready, right? Then those countries cannot negotiate saying that you need to change this policy, or you need to change this goal, or you need to give me flexibility with respect to obligation. With respect to this, there is no flexibility. They have to follow those goals and stipulate obligation. But with respect to pillars and inside the pillars commitments, member countries, any new member have the flexibility to choose it. Okay, clear? Then what is India's take on this particular the framework? The Prime Minister has described this grouping as this grouping has born out of the collective desire of all the member countries, those who have applied for the membership, to make the Indo-Pacific region an engine of global economic growth. The future of global growth will be, most of the growth will be contributed from the member countries of Indo-economic region. Okay, that is what he is talking about here, and calling for common and creative solutions to tackle the economic challenges in the region. There are so many economic challenges being faced by the member countries. For those problems which are common, the common economic problems, we need creative solution to, to get these creative solutions. Maybe this framework will help in to solve these challenges. And another thing is, what external ministry has issued in a statement is India is keen to collaborate with the partner countries under IPEF and work towards advancing the regional economic connectivity. Economic connectivity. If countries do member, part of this one, then the country's economic growth, there will be economic connectivity and economic integration also. And finally, it will result in increase in the trade between the countries and investment between among the countries also will increase. So that means more or less you can see that India is supportive of this particular framework agreement. But the problem is there are some specific concerns India is having. What is that? The specific concern that is also directly with US is the data localization. Data localization means, as I explained previously, the Amazon company, which is US based company, coming to India, the digital services it is offering, as part of it is collecting data, Indian people data, where the data will be storing. At present, all these companies, they are storing data all the way, taking from India to US, and there in US servers, they are saving the data. But in 2019, Indian government has introduced a bill in Lok Sabha. So finally, they could not make it an act because it is not passed in both the houses. But a bill is introduced in the Lok Sabha. There, as part of this, this bill, the one of the provision that is mentioned is the data that is collected by global digital companies. They have to store the data in India only. They cannot take the data to US. And even Reserve Bank of India also issued guidelines to the payment gateway, that is Visa and MasterCard. Okay, like these companies, whatever data you are collecting, the account details and names and all this information, you cannot store the data in US. You have to store the data in India. This is called a data localization. So Indian government is continuously more worried about the data being taken. Indian people data is being taken away to other countries. So they want the data to be stored in India only by government. So, and also the government is like RBI. But how India is perceived it as? What India said is that, US said is, the US said that India's policy of the data localization, which is imposing on my countries, right, digital companies, which goes against to the principle of that there should not be any trade barrier. But this particular data localization is acting like a trade barrier. Trade barrier means an obstacle in increasing the economy, in increasing the trade. A trade barrier means it is creating an obstacle to increase the trade on the of the specific. Here it is digital trade. So here the data localization is actually creating a barrier to not to increase the digital trade. But this is something in against to the world principle that member countries should not, create these kind of barriers in against to increase in the trade of any of the specific element, either it is a digital trade, services trade, or maybe a goods trade, anything it can be. And more importantly, it will put a lot of the pressure, or maybe it will become more costlier for smaller companies if you are imposing this data localization. If you are imposing data localization, all the countries, all these digital companies, they have to build the servers in India, and this will add up more costly for those companies. And this will increase in the production cost, okay, for the given company, and it will finally force the digital services cost will increase. And cost increasing means the services demanded by the people will also decrease. And this is all because this is all something called as a barrier. Okay. The next thing is the specific, the IPEF, maybe with respect to the pillar 2, the supply chains. It will supply, complement with another supply chain, initiative that is taken by the Quad members. The 3 countries in this region, Japan and Australia and India, recently they themselves had decided that they wanted to launch a resilient supply chain initiative. Okay, supply chain resilience initiative with respect to creating resilient and secure trade linkages by these 3 countries, not to have going ahead. That means reducing the dependence on China, going ahead. So now this framework is brought in. As part of it, the pillar 2 talks about this supply chain resilience. So if that is actually realized, then it will complement the these three countries' initiatives, and maybe later on, maybe this initiative will be merged into that framework. Wherein you can see that more than three countries, there are 11 countries, those who are members of that framework. Okay, so that is the bigger advantage. Okay, next, what are the squad members' problems with China individual? For India, the problem is in 2020 during the peak of the COVID time, they had invaded or ingressed into the Indian part of the Ladakh region, and since then they are posting there itself. They are not leaving the Indian land. And in the Galwan Valley, there was a clash. Almost 19 Indian soldiers had died. That is one thing. Another thing is China is circumventing with respect to containing India. How? What they are doing is they are investing in different infrastructure projects in our neighboring countries like Nepal, Sri Lanka, importantly. And by investing in these countries to build the infrastructure, Chinese country, these countries could not able to repay it back that money. What they are doing is they are getting it a 100-year lease or maybe permanent ownership of the particular infrastructure project by Chinese government. And when they are getting that ownership, Chinese people are continuously hosting there, and which is a direct threat to India. In Chinese people hosting, the reaching the nearby, in near reach of the India, and that particular project is maintained by Chinese people, which is a direct threat. And China is specifically encircling India by investing in Sri Lanka. Example, the Hanbantota port. That port was built by that particular company, Chinese company, that could not able to repay in time by the Sri Lankan government, and they had given it 99-year lease to the Chinese company. Now Chinese company is managing that particular port. Okay, so that is very near, near to the India. That is a strategic security threat to India. And another thing is the place where India is contesting that land belongs to India. That is Pak-occupied Kashmir. Through that region, one of the Belt and Road Initiative project with China is going through, that is China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which passes through the POK. And it is in against to the sovereign interest, or the Chinese government did not give respect to the territorial integrity of India. Another thing is India have a lot of the claims, the interest in energy security from the point of view in the South China Sea. So that, but where South China Sea, what China is saying that all South China Sea belongs to the China, and it is in against to the international law. And because of it, now South China Sea has become an area of contestation between all the countries, the ASEAN countries which are bordering the South China Sea and with China, and which is a direct security or maybe trade threat to India. Another thing is India's loss of trade, not only India's trade, lot of countries trade do pass through the South China Sea. But South China Sea, what China is saying is this, all the South China Sea belongs to us. And this is something a direct threat or indirect threat Indian government is facing from because of the actions of China. Some of them I listed. Okay. Now, what is it for US? US is also same thing. US, the China's mercantilism and military modernization they are doing, and continuously, right? They are suppressing the human rights in China and Chinese lands like Hong Kong. So this is not accepted. Okay, everywhere human rights needs to be respected. Every human should have the dignity to live peaceful life. Okay, and China's increase in trade with the world countries. Okay, and increase in trade and other countries depends upon China. China is leveraging that power for their own benefits, and military is continuously upgrading, and they are increasing their naval power and naval presence in the South China Sea, which is in against to the original nature of South China Sea, which is highly peaceful, never militarized, but Chinese people are militarizing it by heavily patrolling the Chinese military, right? Another thing is you can see that one of the US interest is US here have the direct stake in the given region, with the 42% of the world exports do go through this region, and 38% of the global imports do pass through this South China Sea, or there is something called the Malacca Strait. And this is the most busiest trade route. But here China is showing its aggression, right? So this is not something in balancing to the global balance, balance of power. So if you measures are not taken at now, then going ahead, then one day you can see that China will become more powerful in the given region, and it will create a lot of problems. And China is not a democratic country; it's autocratic. It goes by the the whims and fancies of the given leader of the then leader of the state. Okay. And another thing is why Quad? See, in Quad here you can see that for the US, they want to reassert, right, that we are also powerful here in the given region, and we are also have this economic interest in the given region. If US did not take any action, the China will be continuously increasing its powers, and which will be threatening tomorrow's the global politics and global international order and global international security and peace. And that's why US partnered with these countries. In these countries, you can see that Australia and Japan are already allies of US. Ally means that they do specifically, the follow what United Nations states. That is ally. But India is not an ally, but important strategic partner. There will be negotiations, and both the countries, on whatever the elements they do like, they do cooperate, and wherever there is disagreement, they do not cooperate. Okay, but there is no compulsion that India have to follow what US says, but these countries do follow it. That is what is allies. Okay, and all these countries are democratic countries, and that is what made the US to form this grouping and to be part of this one. So here, as part of this one, you can see that China is growing its challenge as a regional status. Okay, at present, the regional status quo is being challenged by China, saying that at present in South Indo-Pacific, there is no powerful country. Okay, maybe Japan is the advanced country, developed country. Japan never shown its aggression after World War II. So the Indo-Pacific was completely peaceful, never militarized. But now China is showing its aggression and it's want to challenge the present status quo of regional balance, saying that we want to be powerful. We want to be powerful. That is what challenging the US. That is what a challenging thing for the US. Another thing is challenging the China is also challenging the democratic values, that is especially in the Hong Kong and also in the Xinjiang province in the northern, in the eastern part of China. So in all these places where they are clearly violating the democratic values and also the human freedoms, which is also in against to the humanity, right? So it is all worrying a thing for the all the Quad members. And another thing is, you can see that this is what is mentioned here: the cracking down of freedoms, right? And if any country is opposing China's policies, China is immediately imposing the trade barriers, immediately banning the exports or maybe banning the imports. But you can see that world countries are depend typically on the China's supply chains. This is what where they are threatening the other countries that don't take or issue or talk anything in against to China. This is what exactly they done in against to the Australia also. They stopped importing Australia wine because Australia has the criticized the COVID-19 handling of China. Okay, so this is something that what they are doing. The present the concession they have, they are opposing those countries that are taking measures in against to those countries. Okay, this is what you can see that the problem with China. Problem with China. What is the specific problem with Japan? The problem is that islands problem. The Senkaku Islands regularly they do go into conflict in the East China Sea or Japan Sea, that we can see. And another thing is China's military is building up heavily, which is a direct threat to the China, to the Japan security. So that is why here Japan want some partners. Okay, and another thing is mentioned the what you can say that economic conditionalities they are mentioning, they are imposing on the member, the regional countries. Those are located in the South China Sea, Indo-Pacific region. Those are all developing countries, poor countries. They are in critical need of investment. What they are doing is they are giving the money, but they are coming with conditionalities. Okay, so if you sign the Belt and Road Initiative, then only I will give you funding in your country. And whatever infrastructure they are building at a huge cost, and that cost could never able to pay back by those member countries. They are leading to debt trap, and this is called debt trap diplomacy. China is following. So this is how China is increasing its influence, but this is not something that is going by the rules. This is they are doing something like in against to the rules, in illegal manner. They are doing all these things, and because of it, you can see that China is becoming powerful. And this type of race, the China's race is not warranted for the world. Okay, that needs to be contained. That needs to be contained. Okay, so for most of the Japan, they do for a lot of needs they are depend upon the trade imports. Okay, so all those imports do happen through the South China Sea, but in South China Sea highly militarized and by the Chinese military, and they are not secured. Okay, so the Japan and US, the critically they are as they are allies militarily, they are combinedly patrolling or securing those lines. But what China is doing, the Japan want to do, being a developed country having a lot of capital, they want to typically outrun the Chinese capacity with respect to investment in manufacturing, investment in trade, and infrastructure development in the Indo-Pacific region. But to do that, Japan only may not be sufficient. That's why they had brought in other countries also. Okay, this is with respect to each country's problem with the China. What is China's response to this group? What China has responded is it has simply mentioned that this group is going to be an Asian NATO. Is it a negative statement? Yes, this is a very big negative statement. It is because the NATO means it is a military organization, collective military organization. And a collective military organization, there is something called as a NATO is simply a military group, okay, a defense group. There is no any other discussion happen under NATO. Only thing is it is a security organization, military organization, military organization. That too, there is a clause saying that this NATO in against to a specific. So why NATO has formed specifically towards aiming one country's, the race, right? To typically contain the USSR power, NATO has been created. So NATO one is military in its characteristic, and it is created in the specific aim of containing USSR. So now, if you are calling Quad as Asian NATO, it means that you are talking it from two point of views, saying that it is a grouping that is created. Quad is a group that is created in towards the China, right? But this type of the creation of groups in against towards any other country is not internationally accepted. That should not be done. That should not be done. Okay, but as we have discussed till now, the Quad air, nowhere we talked about the security, the defense angle. Till now what we have discussed about the Quad, nowhere it talked about the security angle. We talked about the cooperation in multiple dimensions. Okay, especially economic angle, trade, supply chains, right? So, and another thing is manufacturing and the rare elements manufacturing. So with respect to new technologies and all these things, it is a cooperative group to collectively bring in their own expertise. But the China's response of Asian NATO is completely baseless, because Quad nowhere talked about explicitly about defense or military. It is completely talking about the collective cooperation. Okay, but the point here is, what are the challenges? Final topic, that is, what are the challenges of Quad grouping? The challenges of Quad grouping is, first and foremost, the definition of Indo-Pacific itself. The definition of Indo-Pacific. Okay, all these four countries, by using their collective efforts, they want to go look into, right, investing, increasing trade, or maybe investing in these countries, infrastructure creation, climate change support, right? The taxation policy related to all these things, the member countries wanted to do something for the collective, the economic growth of the Indo-Pacific region. So when you want to see the collective growth of the Indo-Pacific region, right, and also this is all about the securing trade lines, securing the trade lines among the countries. Securing means in against to the external threat to the ship that is going on the open sea, that is the security of the shipping lines. So here, first we need to, when you want to secure them, when you want to go for the collective benefits or collective growth in the given region, first we need to define what is the region. So the Indo-Pacific definition of US is, it talks about Indo-Pacific means west coast of India to west coast of United States. So it means that what lies in west to Indian Ocean, west coast of India, even there also there is Indian Ocean, till the African coast, till African coast. All that area is not included in the Indo-Pacific definition of AS. That is the first problem. But India's definition of Indo-Pacific is all the way from the eastern border of African continent to the west coast of United States. All that region we should call it as Indo-Pacific. Why? Because India have two specific, the concerns in the west of Indian Ocean, west of Indian coast. Okay, west coast of India. The two specific thing is, one is the direct threat militarily we are facing from China in the open seas. Another thing is, one of the port located in the Arabian Sea, that is Gadar port. The Gadar port is being developed by the Chinese people as part of this China-Pakistan economic corridor. And that is being developed and being, the military is being continuously posted there. So the threat that we are facing in the Arabian Ocean, in this, in the Gadar port, is from two militaries. One is Chinese and Pakistan military. So this is the security problem that we are facing for the securing of trade lines. The second thing is, most of our, the energy imports do come from the Middle East countries. Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, all these are located in the west of India. And if that area is not included in the Indo-Pacific, then India could not able to secure the critical trade or the, the supply lines. But securing supply lines also one of the, the objective in the Quad grouping. But this is the bigger problem. So first challenge is, first all the countries needs to decide upon what is Indo-Pacific region, and that is where there is no concurrence. Okay, there is no common agreement between the countries. Next thing, despite all its ambitions, what they want to do, the areas of cooperation, even now it is not an official agreement. Countries people did not sign anything called as a Quad grouping as an agreement. It is only an informal grouping. People, the member countries do come and they do negotiate on the multiple issues which are concerning both of them, all the four countries. Okay, but there is no official agreement. If there is no official agreement, you do not see that a permanent structure. There is no organization, right? There is no secretariat. There is a secretariat. Even if the not only Quad group members is not met, other time also they are continuously negotiating between the member countries, and they are taking multiple decisions. They are implementing it, and this will make the secretariat will make a particular grouping a functional organization. But there is no agreement at all. So there is no permanent decision making body, right? So this is the bigger problem. But the ambitions are very big. Another thing is, see, rather than Quad grouping, the Quad as a group, see, Quad also, this is an unofficial name. This is not an official name. Okay, unofficial name. So as Quad is, they did not create anything called as new agreement, right? So what they did is, among these all four countries, already there are some agreements between them. Okay, already signed agreements. They want to just expand them. They want to utilize those present existing agreements. They do not want to create anything called as a new organizations. And unless you create new organization, you do not see that heavy benefit of the collective benefits. So that is the bigger problem. Another thing is, unlike NATO, the Quad group doesn't include anything called as a collective defense. But is defense should be part of it? That is a divided topic. But defense is not at all part of this Quad group. On one side, this is good because Quad is not created in against to point towards any third country. That is very good. But with respect to containing the Chinese aggression, without having a defense pact, how can you contain it? That is another question. But the question here is, India, which is part of the the Quad grouping, as we know that India's policy is non-alliance. That means it does not choose one group over another group. So choosing one group over another group will come into if there is a military agreement. So India did not choose during the Cold War either US group or USSR group because that involves the military buildup, military agreement like NATO this side, Warsaw Pact that side. So likewise here, as defense part is not included, India is part of this Quad grouping. India typically never support anything called as military groupings, and India will not be part of it. And for Indian point of view, this does not have anything called as a NATO type of military agreement is good for the India, but from the directly confronting or containing the restricting the Chinese activities or military aggression, there should have been a defense defense pact. All the pact also should have been there. But from Indian point of view, that we have to be happy that at present Quad group does not have anything called as defense element. Okay, and that is a good thing. And last thing is what the Quad want to aim for. The Quad as a group want to Quad as a group want to aim. Recently they have taken a decision at the end of the Tokyo summit that they want to launch a collective maritime initiative to combat the illegal fishing in Indo-Pacific region. So what is the problem with the illegal fishing? So the first thing is, what is that agreement name? Indo-Pacific Partnership for Maritime Domain Awareness. So what is that specific problem? The specific problem is, in the Indo-Pacific region, in the open waters, in the open seas, almost 80 to 95% of the fishing do happen illegally. And without the informing. Illegal means, generally if you are fishing in any open seas, any country can go for the open sea fishing, but they have to report to the neighboring country. And another thing is, they have to follow the recognized already accepted methodologies for the fishing purpose. So here in the Indo-Pacific region, majority of the oceans, Chinese people, they do illegally, unregulatedly, without having any protection. They are going for the fishing. Almost 80 to 94% of the illegal fishing is being done by one country's people, that is China. And as a recent ranking done by the particular international group, that illegal, unregulated, unprotected fishing index, right? It actually typically maps the illegal fishing activity globally. It has ranked China as the worst offender. Another problem is, as the China is going for illegal fishing, it is having the largest fishing fleet. But the bigger problem that is being created by the Chinese board, the fishing boards, is they do follow something called as a bottom trawling method. Bottom trawling method. So in this method, what they do is, when they are going for a fishing, they do use large fish nets. Almost they are touching from the surface of the ocean water to the bottom of the ocean surface, bottom of the given water body, or maybe the surface of the given water, the ocean crust. So from all the way from top to bottom, if you are carrying, if you are dragging the fish nets for almost some meters, then what happens is, if you are real, the almost all the animals living in this water region will get trapped in that one. And they are that is one thing. So many animals are getting died. Another thing is, there is critical life structure is living on the surface at the bottom of the ocean. So that is, that natural environment is being disturbed by these fishing boats and these fish nets. And because of it, you can see that critical option, the critical the ocean environment, is being disturbed by this illegal fishing. And it is also creating a lot of pressure on the diversity of the ecosystem. Okay, so this is the problem that is coming up with the illegal fishing that is happening in the Indo-Pacific region. So as it is illegal, that needs to be contained. So to contain, we need to first report that this illegal fishing is done by this particular country on this time in this specific area, right? To find out that what the Indo-Pacific region, what kind of illegal fishing activity is being done by China. All these Quad countries, they wanted to create a platform So by creating a platform, already there is an existing framework range available to go for a satellite based existing system, that is a satellites, satellite surveillance systems which are centered towards the Indo-Pacific region. These satellite surveillance centers are located in the countries called as India and Singapore, and there are also in other countries somewhere in Indo-Pacific. But in near border of India, in two countries, in India and Singapore, we have two satellite surveillance systems which are mapping the almost all of the Indian Ocean, wherein this particular service has been, the surveillance system has been developed to secure the trade, to secure the trade lines against to the pirates. Okay, so that is why, as part of it, all the satellite surveillance centers located in this given region, they are continuously interacting with one another by regularly sharing the information what they are found out, what they had found out. So now these quad countries, what they want to do is they wanted to catalyze, use this existing infrastructure of satellite surveillance in the given, Indo-Pacific region to find out the illegal fishing, activities of China, illegal fishing activity of China and Chinese ships movements and maneuvers, okay, in the Indo-Pacific region, so that you can see that ultimately you can blame China for the illegal activity, illegal fishing. If that is controlled, the neighboring countries will have the benefit of fishing those, fishing in those regions, because all those countries are poor. They are dependent upon the ocean bodies also for their economic activities. And another thing is critical natural ecosystem in the ocean also can be protected, can be protected. And for all these things here, that quad partners wanted to go for even routine naval exercises also. Okay, collective militaries, naval group, naval systems, rather than going for, anything called as, the naval collective defense pact. Collectively, they do go for the naval exercises. Okay, for the better interoperability. That means security. That means to exchange best practices between this, this country's the navy versus the other country's navy. So this is only about learning from each other. It is not about taking collective measures in against towards third country. It is only about learning from one country to another country. So there is something called as Indian Navy's Information Fusion Center in Indian Ocean region. Information, the fusion center in the Indian Ocean region. What is this fusion? What is this information? Information that is found out by these satellite surveillance systems located in the two countries, right? So if the two countries information, it is shared among the countries, then you can see that information fusion. So to collectively receive and to send the data, there should be some center, right? So that information fusion center, and where that information, satellite information is located, it is located in the Indian Ocean region. It is located in the Indian Ocean region. So now this particular information fusion center, which has been created, already being used in against to the, for the securing of trade lines, now will be used by the quad countries in against to this illegal, to find out the illegal fishing. Okay, to find out the, know about more about the information fusion center. This is something that was established in the 2018, okay, which is a regional grouping. Only, specifically it is about securing the maritime trade in against the maritime terrorism and, the piracy, robbery. These are very much common, okay, in the open seas, and also about the drug trafficking, that countries, some countries illegally shipping, drugs from one country to another country. Okay, so this is what here this fusion center has been established in the Gurgaon region, in the Gurgaon region of UP. Okay, near to the Delhi, wherein this center, this fusion center, have links with almost 50 nations, 50 nations and multilateral maritime centers, and all these 50 nations are surviving, the one part of the ocean, or one ocean or the another, in one part of the ocean or another part of the ocean. So all that information will be sent to this particular Gurgaon basis center, and this center will be collecting the data, will be mapping the data, will be continuously monitoring the almost all the open seas in the Indo-Pacific region, in the Indo-Pacific region. and because of it, continuous monitoring, right? The given initiative, the countries is continuously securing the open sea trade, and also in against to this piracy, armed robbery, or maybe even the drug trafficking. All this can be is could able to control in advance. Okay, clear. Okay, the next thing is whether quad grouping will be open for other member countries. Okay, as of now, quad group, the grouping, the four countries are not focused upon expanding the membership of this grouping, the four. Okay, but they have shown their intention that they want to make, the add other democratic countries in the given region. So that is what we can call it as quad plus. That quad plus, in which you can see that these are the countries have shown interest to join. South Korea, New Zealand, Vietnam. They have shown interest to join this grouping, but as of now, the Quad group, membership is not open for other countries. But going ahead, the member countries have shown interest that we want to be part of this grouping. Okay, we want the other countries also to be part of this particular grouping. Here, so this is the end of this talk.